Perfect. I
Hello.
see a presentation coming on. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
good.
So I will pass it over to you guys and we can get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Jamie. Thanks for inviting us and including us to speak to this great group of people who's taken some time to learn about all the things that are happening here today. And we're so excited to share with you about regulations. We've got a captive audience to speak about regulations, which is near and dear to my heart. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Devon Smiegielski. I'm the Pesticide Certification Specialist with Alberta Environment and Protected Areas. And today I'm just going to move the screen so you can see we're going to kind of play musical chairs. This is Glenora Coles. I'll let you introduce yourself, Glenora.
Hey everyone, I am the Pesticide Registration and Special Use Approval. So anyone with a vendor or service registration or applying pesticides within that 30-meter buffer, you're probably working with me.
Yeah, so Glenora's working for any of those of you who worked with Tanya Rushcall. She's happily on maternity leave right now, and we are very, very fortunate to have Glenora step in and fill her shoes while Tanya is away. So Glenora's sharing her screen, and I'm going to speak to you, and then we'll switch around. So if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt or wait to the end, or we'll have our email addresses at the end of this if you want to connect with Glenora or myself at any time after. So before we dive into really the meat of what Glenora and I are speaking to, I think it's important for us just to be all on the same page of where the division between Health Canada's PMRAs is and where Alberta Environment and Protected Areas stands. So I kind of just like to give the preamble. I know you heard Andrea Swatsky speak earlier today, but just to provide that definition of where the role is when it comes to the pesticide regulations. So in Canada, pesticides are regulated through Health Canada's PMRA, and the PMRA is responsible for registering all the pesticides to allow for sale and use in Canada. And they do this through a specific review of scientific studies to ensure that any of the products that they are registering don't pose a significant threat or have to human health or the environment, or they pose minimal risk when they're used according to their pesticide product labels. So once a pesticide becomes registered, when you come into Alberta, we then would place a schedule onto every registered pesticide. So the way our regulations are written is that we define pesticides into schedules. So we have Schedule 1 pesticides. These are primarily those restricted class pesticides. There's not a lot of those. Schedule 2 is likely where the majority of the products that you would be applying for this group of people listening to us speak today would fall under. These are mostly commercial class pesticides. Schedule 3 would be those domestic lawn and garden products. That's typically things you would find at, those ready-to-use products you could see at Canadian Tire or Walmart or PV Mart, something like that. And then finally, we have Schedule 4 products. These are really, really low risk commercial and domestic pesticides, likely things you didn't even realize were pesticides. When we've recently done the registered pesticide product listing where we evaluate all of the schedules, we found products that I was really surprised. There were ones like kitty litter, or there was a Dyson fan that had an antimicrobial filter, so it fell under Schedule 4 pesticide. So we, in the province of Alberta, have an ability to kind of categorize what are these lower risk products that we really have no business regulating, like Dyson fans, or what are the products that we do want to have more oversight, like a Schedule 1 or 2 product that needs to be used by a certified individual. So that's kind of the terminology. So we're all speaking the same language, but it sometimes can read a little bit complicated. And so we have a document published. It's the registered pesticide product listing. This is available on our website. Currently, you can find the 2022 version on alberta.ca, or you can just Google registered pesticide product listing and it will pop up. We will be releasing a 2024 edition in the coming weeks, so keep your eyes posted to that. But here, this is where we would go through, get a list from the PMRA of all the registered products in Canada, and then we apply our regulations to find the schedule, so you don't have to do the hard work. If you do come across a pesticide that you're currently using and it's not on the RPPL, feel free to reach out to me and we'll help you walk through it, because it is a snapshot in time. And as you all know, the registered products, that's kind of a living and moving thing. And we just are able to publish what we receive from the PMRA at that time. So you can take a look at what the RPPL will look like. Yeah, you're good. Okay. And this is an example of what you might see on the RPPL. So on the left side, you can find the PCP numbers of each product, and you can just click on it's a PDF document, so you can Control F and find whichever PCP number, and it will give you further indications of what schedule it falls under. Okay, so now we're all speaking the same language, and now we get into the really fun and exciting things about looking at incidents. And I think many of you may have heard me speak about incident management, and we wanted to look at this a little bit differently this time around and say, how can we move above and beyond our compliance or above and beyond regulations, and really learn from other people's mistakes of things that we have seen come through our department. So I'm going to share some really fun stories with you, and hopefully we can learn from other people's mistakes. So let's just look quickly at the data and what it says. So we pull all of the incidents and calls that come into our department every year. So this is the 2023 data that we have most recently published. It's a little over 100 incidents that we have received. And this gives you an idea of what kind of category that they would fall under. So the blue bars are the 2023 data, and then we compare that to a 5-year average that you can find in the orange bar. And so we categorize these under different subcategories, such as drift, unauthorized activity. So that would be an example, would be operating without a pesticide service registration or without a certificate. Human health is another category, scenarios where property has been damaged, or if there's other legislation or APIA contraventions outside of the certification and service registration being missing. We have spills and fires, animal health, and disposal. So one item, I think, you can glean a few things looking at this bar graph. Something for me when I look at this is the increase in disposal incidents that we have seen compared to the 5-year average. So that's something that as a department we're keeping our eye on. And another is just the unauthorized activity. We're seeing a bit of an increase compared to our 5-year average. So we'll take a look at the same data. So it's the same numbers, but now we're going to look at this from a lens of which kind of category or what classification they would fall under. So this looks at the different classifications of pesticide applicator certificate. So aerial, you see a huge increase. The blue line again is the data looking for 2023, and the orange bar graph is the 5-year average. So with this aerial one, I do have to kind of give a little bit of a caveat on it. It appears as though it's more than we were receiving compared to the 5-year average. But really what we've done as a department is we've captured a reporting issue where these aerial companies were primarily doing pesticide applications in a forest management area. So they were reporting, they don't call them drift incidents or oversprays, they call them excursions. Thanks, Glenora. Yeah, they call them excursions. So they were reporting these excursions through the forestry group rather than to our Alberta Environment Protected Areas. So they've corrected that, and now we're just seeing a bit of an increase as the reporting chain changes. So I don't actually think we're seeing it is a greater number, but I don't know if they were appropriately being reported in the past. But you can see a significant number of the calls that were coming in from the department were either aerial calls, people who had observed an overspray, or it's a very visible application, and you have a lot of people who call in because maybe they're uncomfortable with it or have other concerns. The rest is quite similar, and nothing that I would say stands out notably, except we do see when we look at this bar graph, there's another category, this light blue bar, and that identifies individuals who were operating without a certificate. And so I find that extra interesting because that is my specialty where I'm evaluating pesticide certification. And so this is interesting for me to see which sectors are we seeing individuals work where they are not certified. And we see a large group in the landscape, industrial, and exterior rodent section that we are needing to make sure that these individuals who are applying pesticides in this area are doing so with a certificate. And one final note before I leave on this one is we have seen an uptake in exterior rodent control incidents. And so we don't even have a 5-year average for this because it really has been one of those dark horses that has crept up out of nowhere, where we're really observing people utilizing these products in ways that they shouldn't be. And we're going to get down into that right now when we talk about certification. So some really interesting incidents that we have found in our department in this last 2023 is, without naming any names too much here, we've had a company who was conducting an exterior rodent control in a dog park. The applicators who were conducting that work did not hold the appropriate class of pesticide applicator certificate, and also the business itself, they didn't hold a pesticide service registration. So in addition to all of that, they also had a very gross neglect of how the product itself was being applied. So we've worked with that company to bring them back into compliance. They went through significant enforcement action and went to prosecution, so that we were able to receive some creative sentencing money, and we're able to update our national applicator core manual exams and structural exams as well. So we've been very, very lucky and very fortunate to work with Vivian Servant to do that work, and I couldn't be happier to have her still joining in to help have a product that we're really pleased and excited about. But unfortunately, the money came to us because someone did do a really bad thing. So another incident where we have been working with is a company who was offering a pest control service with a proprietary product that they were advertising. And when we further inspected it, it was clear that the individual was using a product that was registered for livestock flies, and they were using it in a restaurant. So this person, they did not hold a pesticide applicator certificate or a service registration, and they were, again, using a product inappropriately. We have countless companies who are using assistants to apply products with certification statements on the label. That's been another big increase we've seen in this year. And the last one I want to highlight is applicators just applying pesticides with an expired certificate. So being aware of the issue dates and expiry dates and when you need to be ensuring you're going back and recertifying is an important piece. So now we've kind of talked about the incidents, but I just would like to look specifically at the legislation and what the legislation kind of has to say about this. So when we're looking who needs to be certified when we're talking about a pesticide application. So anyone who is applying those Schedule 1 or 2 pesticides, anyone who is applying a pesticide with a certification statement on the label, and anyone who is applying a Schedule 3 pesticide if you're doing so in a rental dwelling, in a common indoor and outdoor area of condominiums, if you are doing so in or on the grounds of a school, hospital, nursing home, or daycare center, they're a higher risk, or if you're doing so for higher reward, so as part of a service. Those are important things to keep in mind when you're doing your applications. There are different types of certificates that are available, and it's a big piece is to know the limitations of all 3 of these certificates. So these are listed in the least responsible to the most responsible when it comes to compliance. So the regulations authorize the use of non-certified assistants. These are staff members that you can just walk through the training checklist that's found in the Code of Practice. They require minimal training, but as a result of their minimal training, they do require more on-site supervision. An authorized assistant, they've gone through more training. They have to have that checklist completed similar to those non-certified assistants, but they've also completed training from a certified trainer, and they've passed an authorized assistant exam. These groups can be a little bit more autonomous, so they can go out to a site without direct supervision of a certified applicator. And then finally, we have the certified pesticide applicator, which I'm guessing is most of you who are here today. You've passed the Lakeline Core exam. This is that content that's general to all certification classes. And then you've also passed a specific class, or maybe more than one or two or three or four. And that's that technical knowledge that you would have. And because you've had more training and you hold an official pesticide applicator certificate, the regulations look at you as the most responsible and the one who is liable for any applications that the individuals you're training underneath you. One thing to keep in mind that we have been seeing as well, we're currently doing a review of service registration holders, and something that has come up in the last month that I've observed is certified pesticide applicators who are supervising more than 6 assistants. So keep that in mind as you're getting into the summer season coming up of how many assistants you can have working beneath you. It's 6 total, so that's a combination of authorized assistants and non-certified assistants. So just be aware that you're not going over that 6 number. The next piece is the classes of applicators. So we talked a little bit about that, but why I'm bringing this slide up here, this is right from the Code of Practice, where you can find the list of all, sorry, not the Code of Practice, it's right from the Pesticide Ministerial Regulation, Schedule 5. You can find a description of the classes of certificates that are available, as well as the classes of service registrations, and a bit of a description of what that would include. Why I want to pause on this today is because it's very important as an applicator to be aware of the scope of your certificate and where the limitations are. So you really need to be staying in your lane. When I showed that bar graph earlier about the exterior rodent class, I think a lot of people or applicators may have thought that they were doing things legally, but didn't realize that they weren't. So in many cases, it was individuals who did hold a pesticide applicator certificate in either the structural class or landscape class, but they didn't realize that there was limitations to that class that would prohibit them from applying exterior rodent control products in a different setting. So be really aware, and if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have conversations just to make sure that everyone is aware that you're operating appropriately based on your level of training. And then next, I'd like to speak to the certification statements that I spoke to on the pesticide product labels. So any of those Schedule 4 pesticides, or any pesticide actually that has a certification statement on the label, needs to be applied by a certified pesticide applicator. Some examples of these statements are for pest control operators and commercial use only. So that's one example that I've seen on the labels. Another would be only to be used by a certified pest control operator, farmer, and person authorized in government-approved pest control programs. So those are just 2 examples. However, we all know that pesticide product labels can be written in different ways. So be aware, be a detective when you're looking at your labels. Read them before the beginning of the season to see if there's been any changes, because these statements can be a little bit tricky. And in some products, I've even seen where they have a certification statement only for the use on turf. So be aware. Again, if you have questions about that, what that would look like. I know Andrea, I'm throwing you up there, Andrea. I'm sure she would be willing to help, as well as myself. I'm here to give anyone a hand. We really are here as an ally for you and just want you to be working in compliance and make that as easy as possible for you. As a final note, authorized assistants and non-certified assistants cannot apply these products. So it's not appropriate for you to be allowing that work. One final note on certification while we are here is just about applicator recertification and the importance of being aware of those expiry dates because it is so important to know that you have 5 years to obtain 15 credits. So everyone who's sitting here today, you know the value of recertification. You're clearly all doing the things that you need to do to ensure that you are maintaining your recertification requirements. But just to remind you, you can only obtain 10 credits in 1 year for each class. The required credits are listed here on the screen. And by the end of your 5 years, you do require 15 credits. So, it is manageable if you get your 3 a year. And I really encourage you not to wait till those final 2 years to get them them to really ease into it and enjoy the training, because it just makes us better applicators and more professional applicators when we have ongoing training and we're not just keeping it to certain segments of our certification period. I do want to step away a little bit from regulations because we are kind of talking about incidents that we had seen, and we've seen a lot of interactions with the public, and both negative and positive. But I wanted to just take a moment to speak to you today about some positive interactions and how we can encourage good standing with the public. And really, this is dipping our toes a little bit into being professional applicators, but I think it's an important piece. As I'd mentioned, our department receives roughly 100 calls a year. This last period, we had a little bit more than that. And about 10 to 15% of those usually are, a Karen or a Darren who are concerned about pesticides being used or have a huge amount of mistrust or social mistrust and are calling because they've observed something that they think is wrong about a pesticide application, and they would like our department to investigate it. Or we've had people call because they've actually confronted a pesticide applicator and they didn't receive a response that they thought was appropriate. Or we've also heard lots of aerial applicators. You guys looked at the statistics with me. The aerial applicators is a big piece. So we do see people more now than ever before who are very interested in how pesticides are being used in our province. And also for those of you who are applying in sectors that are closer to the public, like landscape, industrial, if you're doing roadsides, the exterior road, and all of the ones that would be close to people. People are watching what we're doing, and each one of us has a role to play of presenting the most professional version for our whole industry. One negative interaction is really all it takes. So I just wanted to highlight a few points that we've seen to maybe make it easier for you yourself, not only yourselves as applicators, but if you're preparing to onboard summer students coming on, these would be some really great pieces you might want to consider including in your pesticide applicator training for summer students. So the big piece is avoiding being defensive. For those assistants and summer students, I try and encourage them, to provide that clear, transparent information. But at the end of the day, our summer students might not be the people that need to be providing the information. They're really just there at trying to do a job at the end of the day. So if you are an individual who is supervising assistants, you may want to provide your business card for them. So they would have a tool or something to tangibly provide someone who is complaining, so they know, who can I speak to if I have an issue with this application? It likely isn't your summer student. It probably is going to be that supervising applicator. We also recommend that if you're an applicator, you carry copies of the SDS or the pesticide product labels to share. And what we've seen to be very valuable is if applicators who are dealing with someone who seems very confrontational, if you yourself provide them the contact information for Alberta Environment's reporting number, that goes a long way to share with them, I have nothing to hide. I'm a certified applicator. I have all the things I need to be doing. I'm applying approved product as I'm supposed to be. If you feel like you need to report me, here's the number for you to do so. And 9 times out of 10, that diffuses them and they move on with their day. And at the end of the day, we're there to back you up as well. So there's been many examples that we'll get into later where we'll share that. And also just like maintaining a clean professional image, that goes a long way. If you are using assistants for your training, I really encourage you to include role playing in your training, where you would be really bantering with your students and staff to make sure that they're really aware of how can you diffuse a scenario and what is safe to say, what's not safe to say, and what are your boundaries of that. Obviously, encouraging staff to refer complaints to supervising certified applicator. All right, so the next piece is we want to just talk about engaging honestly with regulators. Something we've been identifying that we've seen through inspections are companies who are falsifying information or not maintaining records. And I say falsifying information, but I think in many cases they're only doing so because they did such a poor job of record keeping while they were doing it. And they were trying to go off of memory to give us information, and it just doesn't, it's not legal, first of all, and it really isn't appropriate. So we really want to speak to the record keeping procedures that you're doing within your businesses. Another item that we have seen is companies or individuals who fail to report spills or releases, or other contraventions like not holding a valid certificate or not holding a service registration for the appropriate class. And then not reporting even other things that you might see out in the field. And you all know the work that is happening out in the field, especially when it comes to potentially other competitors. So everyone knows, you know, this is the sector that I'm in, and I kind of know the other people in my scope or sphere of influence who do similar work to me. And if you are aware that someone is operating a business without following the same rules that you are, those are things we like to hear about. You can do so anonymously, or Glenora will share with you later a really, really easy way for you to report this information to us. But we take this information seriously, and we do want to respond to anyone who's choosing not to follow the rules. So if you know it, report it, and really we would like to work with you. So let's go back and look at what the regulations say about some of the pieces that we've seen. Specifically with the service application record keeping. So I'm not going to go through the whole list of what is required for your record keeping, but do know that this is a requirement for you to maintain on a daily basis, and that you have to keep it for 5 years. These are important pieces because you are required to share that with the department upon request. One piece that I'm not sure if everyone is aware of is, oh no, sorry, that's for the vendor. We decided not to talk to you guys about that. So I'm going to carry on. The pesticide applicator records, as I had indicated, they must be completed daily, and they must be kept by the applicator and the service. And they have to be provided to our department upon a request for an inspection or an investigation, if we're doing any sector reviews like we currently are, or if we're doing any sales inventories. If you're a vendor, you'd be required to share your sales data with us. Now, when we look closer at what the legislation says about release reporting requirements, we do have two provisions within our legislation that speak specifically to reporting releases or other potential contraventions. PIA is the overarching umbrella act that we operate under. And so the definition that they use for release reporting is quite broad. It states that no person shall release into the environment of a substance in an amount, concentration, or level, or at a rate of release that causes or may cause a significant adverse effect. So that's a pretty big, broad definition. It seems straightforward, but when we look closer at the pesticide-specific elements as well, it is above and beyond what just might be a spill. So when we look at Section 5 of the Pesticide Sales, Handling, Use, and Application Regulation, it specifies similar wording, except it says this: no person shall handle, sell, transport, store, I think handles in there twice, sorry guys, dispose of a pesticide that causes or may cause an adverse effect. So it gives us a little bit more clarity about what types of things, in addition to just spills and releases, that are a requirement to be reported to the department. So we'll look at a few examples of that. PIA defines adverse effect as impairment of or damage to environment, human health, safety, and damage to property. So that's when we're looking at that initial definition that falls under a PIA. But when we look at other potential adverse effects, this could be examples such as inadvertently applying a product that is not registered for the use it was applied. Or maybe you become aware that a product that you were currently using or used in the last season, it wasn't registered for use. Those would be examples of things that should be reported to our department. Or if you become aware that your certificate or registration has lapsed and you've conducted applications while you've held a lapsed certificate or registration. Those are other examples of things that we would like to see. You know, at the end of the day, I wonder with a lot of the things that I say, like, what is in it for me? Like, why do I care about what you're sharing with me? And I really hope some of you are Bluey fans like me. But, you know, first, yes, okay, you should care because first of all, you are legally obligated. But the second piece to this is that there's a lot of other things that happen when you do report an incident. You know, I think reporting a spill and a release is obvious because you're engaging immediately into specialists that can help you work through that emergency situation. But you also are going above and beyond by allowing us to work with you with potential issues. So a few examples that we've recently had, and this is not just 2023 to be transparent, this is just a few examples that I've pulled in the last 5 years of data that we have, but we have many scenarios where an incident had been reported into our department, but through our inspections and investigations, we were able to work with the application company to identify that what was once thought to be a pesticide application gone wrong was actually caused by something completely different, like disease or insect damage or dying of old age or something, some sort of other definable issue, but through sampling and working with our department, they were able to identify that the applicator did not do anything wrong or that pesticide was not applied inappropriately. So I'm going to pass the chair here over to Glenora, and she's going to speak to you about reporting. These are my chairs.
Super slick. All right. So we've gone over why it's so important, and now we're just going to go over what those options actually look like for reporting. So the first way is the classic way. We have a 24/7 call center. Just as a note, if you do phone in for anyone that hasn't experienced this before, it is a call center, so you're not necessarily initially talking to the people who speak the same language that we do. And then once they collect that information, it goes to an environmental protection officer who is familiar with the jargon and the understanding of what's actually going on with your situation. So if you do phone, don't be alarmed that they may not understand what you're saying. So if you are reporting a public complaint or self-reporting because stuff happens and you recognized a contravention, that is one of the options. And the other option that we are super excited about is the government, environment, and protected areas were finally modernizing and bringing on a digital platform. So it's referred to as DRAS, the Digital Regulatory Assurance System. It's a multi-year project. And at the moment, one of the pieces that have finally been developed and functional is our reporting piece. So if you come online, this is what we'll see. And I've essentially just taken screenshots to walk you through what the process looks like. It's pretty intuitive, but I wanted to make sure there wasn't any barriers with reporting. So we'll go through it piece by piece. So you just click on the submit an incident piece. And you'll notice it does have big red font saying if it's an emergency, please phone the other hotline. The reason behind that is the hotline is linked to essentially send it to our ASSERT or Alberta Emergency and Support Response Team, so that if it's something that needs action right now, it'll go to the right group. And that said, if you are self-reporting something and you're just not comfortable with the incident and you don't know how to handle it, the best recommendation is still to phone that number and just highlight that to the call center, and they will prioritize that call so that you get support right away. And if you are curious if what you want to report would actually be deemed an emergency, you can click for more details and actually defines what that looks like and which type of call should be circumvented to that hotline. So we decide if not an emergency. So this is what the online platform looks like. It is set up to take any type of environmental incident. But of course, for today, we're going to keep focused on the pesticide stuff. So if we click on a pesticide incident, it's going to want your information. And that is one good point I should highlight. I don't like to promote being anonymous if you're reporting a public complaint, mainly because if your information isn't 100% clear, then it can be harder for an environmental protection officer to follow up on. But if it is the difference between you reporting and not reporting, the call center does have an anonymous option if you request it. If we do the online portion, it is required that you have to put in your name and contact information, just the way our system is set up. And so the initial questions are pretty intuitive. Who are you? Do you know the authorization of the party it's related to? So that's essentially a service registration or vendor registration number. And when did this happen? The next piece of information is a map. It was set up this way so that you can toggle through Alberta, zoom in, and drop a pin in the field if something happened on the landscape, make it a lot more usable for all our field operators and applicators. On the downside, there was so much focus, we forgot to include an option just to put in a normal address. So hopefully we will see this change sooner than later. But at the moment, that's how the location piece is set up. For reporting pesticides, we tried to have kind of the vague main type of calls we're gonna see. So the options are application, complaint or overspray, certification, vendor service requirement concerns, record concerns, storage, or disposal and spills. And the nice thing about this setup is you can select more than one type of issue at once. And the program is kind of described as a choose your own adventure. So depending on what you decide, you're only gonna get prompted for those questions associated with those areas. So you shouldn't have a ton of not applicable things popping up on you. And then I did focus on these for the demonstration just because they tend to be the main type of calls we see. So with an application complaint or overspray, it'll also ask what the impact was: human, animal, potable water, property, environment, or possibly one of those application contraventions where there is no physical impact that we are aware of at this time. Another piece with this reporting is it is set up for both self-reporting and public reporting. So if you're self-reporting, you probably have all of the details, and that's great. Include what you have. If you're publicly reporting an issue you see on the landscape, there's a chance you don't know what's going on. You've just seen an issue. A lot of the information isn't necessarily mandatory. So include what you know, it'll make it easier for the follow-up. But if you don't have all of the pieces, that's okay too. We'll figure it out as we go. The certification and disposal fill questions are pretty intuitive. But one thing I would like to highlight is the nice thing with the online option is it does allow for pre-text. So you're not relying on someone from a call center to paraphrase the issue. You're able to put it in and put in all the relevant details. You might have photos, you might have emails, you might have labels, whatever the case may be. You can attach all of that directly and make it a little bit easier in the reporting piece. And one other benefit with the online DRAS is you can go on your dashboard and all of that information is tracked. you should be able to see the environmental protection officer following up with it. So it doesn't kind of go to the cosmos. You can contact someone, provide updates, and it's a little bit more connected. But that said, the phone is always an option too if the online piece doesn't sound like something you're interested in. But either way, at the end of the day, we really just want to see people reporting. And I will pass it back over to Devon.
All right. So one of the other items we just wanted to speak to you all today about some issues that we've seen with individuals utilizing approved products or not using approved products or application methods. And this is mostly just to give, it's like a service update. So I maybe might have a few less emails in my inbox the next week about a note on RPAS or drones. So I have a lot of people asking, where are we at on this? What can I do with this? And I just always like to take an opportunity, especially right now, to let you know where we currently stand with the use of drones and RPAS for application of pesticides. So first, we just want to come back again to Health Canada and the PMRA. And note, as they are the individuals who are registering those pesticides, any products that are used by drones or RPAS need to be first registered for use on the label. And some of the statements or the products that are currently registered for that use, the statement that you would be looking for would read such as this: apply only by a fixed wing rotary aircraft or RPAS, remotely piloted aircraft systems, equipment that has been functionally and operationally calibrated for the atmospheric conditions of the area and the application rates and conditions of this label. So just be aware that you're looking for that RPAS term. You can even go on the label viewer. I'm not sure if Andrea walked you through that, but the label viewer of Health Canada, and you can even search RPAS in the label viewer to see what products are currently registered. Something else that Health Canada has done for us is they have published an information note regarding the use of drones while applying pesticides. So it's available for you to be aware, and I recommend everyone to read that. But just note, if you are looking to use a product, first look at the label. Currently, as of today, I just validated, double-checked on the label viewer myself that these are the only 3 products that are currently registered with that RPAS term on the label. They're all mosquito control products containing BTI, and 2 of them are granular formulations and 1 is a liquid. So it is important to know that these are the only 3 products that can be used in Canada. However, in Alberta, we currently do not have a classification for certification for applicators, but we are really close. We're getting there. So some considerations: if you are an individual who is looking to implement this as part of your business or add it to your services, so a few notes to keep in mind. RPAS is going to be a standalone class, so you can go to Lakeland College and you'll be able to purchase the study material just for RPAS, and you'll be able to add that on to your certification. I'm saying just in Alberta because if you're one of those fringe applicators that are working in multiple jurisdictions, I strongly encourage you to be aware of what is the requirement in your jurisdiction, because each province is taking a slightly different approach to the certification and implementation of RPAS. Some are including it with their existing aerial class, so you'll have to learn all the pieces, including those for conventional planes and helicopters, in addition to RPAS. So we're very grateful that our legislation was written in a way that allows us to have a standalone piece, so people who are using RPAS here also don't have to be knowledgeable in all the other pieces with planes and helicopters. We are currently working again with the lovely Vivian Servant to develop the RPAS basic knowledge requirement module, which has been endorsed by the federal group who reviews these documents. And we're currently working on the manual. We have a projection of spring, summer 2024. I haven't put any specific months on it, but it is coming. If you are interested in this, please feel free to email Lakeland College at pesticides@lakelandcollege.ca, and they'll add you on to a list to be notified when the training does become available. But for those of you eager beavers who are like, I want to get going on this, please note that if you are wanting to book an exam for the RPAS when the manual becomes available, you will first have to demonstrate that you hold a pilot certificate in advanced operations from Transport Canada before you will be able to write the exam for the RPAS class. So if you're wanting to get ahead of the game, I would consider pointing you there first if you haven't already done so. And then otherwise, just please be patient. We are really actively working on it. We are very eager to get this class up and running, and we have all the people at play who need to be. Okay, so I just want to know at the end, we'll start wrapping this up, but how can we learn from other people's mistakes of things that we've seen? And so today, Glenora and I shared a few things with you and some considerations we would encourage you to include when you're doing applications. So first of all, it's very important for you to know the limitations of your training. You're aware of your expiry dates of your certification. You know what classifications and certifications are available and also where the limitations of that are. And you consider recertification throughout your certification period and not just wait to the very, very end. The next piece we would like to remind you is just our interactions with the public. That is very, very meaningful, and it goes a long way for the professionalism for our industry. We're encouraging you to train your assistants in public interactions and ensure that they have an ability to answer questions or know when it's not appropriate to answer questions and when they need to forward on to a supervising applicator. And also being appropriate with the image that you're putting out of the pesticide applications that you're doing. We also spoke to you about ways that we encourage you to work with regulators, and that includes reporting incidents right when they happen. If you observe and report issues when you see them in the field, we also encourage you to work cooperatively with inspectors and investigators, not just within our department, but also with Health Canada. And we encourage you to complete and keep records as required so you can follow up with your regulatory requirements when needed and when requested. And finally, we recommend that you are using approved pesticides and approved application methods. So this would really include reading those labels, knowing the limitations and the restrictions to that. So we will open up the floor if there's any questions, and we have the quiz questions as well. Jamie, I'm not sure. I have them on the screen if you would like, or if I'm not sure how you're popping them up, but you just let me know what that looks like for you. Oh, you're just muted.
Of course I am. Yeah, some people are not getting the pop-up polls, so if you already have them on the slide, feel free to just show them and then we can do it that way.
Perfect, that sounds great. So the first question I have is pesticide application records must be kept must be A, kept for 3 years, B, must be completed daily, C, must be provided to insurance companies, or D, sent to EPA, which is Environment and Protected Areas, annually. So what do we think? We can put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. I'd love to hear or see your faces. I'm just having a hard time finding the chat. Okay. Jamie, my chat's not coming up for some reason.
No problem. So the majority of people are saying B, which is completed daily. There's the odd person that are saying kept for 3 years.
All right, so for those of you keeners, it is B, they must be completed daily. They must be kept actually for 5 years. They must be provided to Alberta Environment and Protected Areas, but only upon request. Your insurance companies might require them, but that's not a regulatory requirement, and that's between you and your insurance company. We have nothing to do with that. That was kind of a red herring trying to throw you off, but yes, complete them daily and keep them for 5 years. The next question we have is true or false. Applicators can only apply pesticides within the scope of their pesticide applicator class. True or false? This might be a bit of a giveaway, but it's so important. I need everyone to be really good and set on this. Oh, it looks so good. My chat came up. Okay, everyone is exactly right. It is indeed true. So pesticide applicators need to be aware of the scope and limitations of their pesticide class that they hold. When targeting a different pest or applying pesticides in a different use location, an applicator should always ensure their certification class is appropriate for the application. And again, I'm here for you. If you have any questions, I want you to be in compliance. And then the last question I have for you today is yes or no, drones or RPAS can be used to apply herbicides in Alberta. I really phoned it in last night when I was making these questions. So I hope everyone gets it right. Okay, they're coming in. Okay, well, I hope you got it. Oh, hold on, it's the wrong screen here. It is indeed no. There are currently no herbicides registered for use in Canada. Our PAS are not permitted for pesticide applications in Alberta at this time, as there's currently no certification class for this application method. So that is it. It looks like a lot of you are very keen. It seems like many of you got these very easy answers correct or questions correct, and I thank you all for participating. If you do have any questions or comments, I'm happy to hear them and am available if you need anything. I'm Devon Smiegielski, and my contact information is there. But I am available for questions right now as well. If anyone has anything else, we have time, I believe, right, Jamie?
Yeah, so there is a question in the chat here. Is a digital record such as application maps from a sprayer sufficient for audit purposes?
Yes, so assuming your digital record contains all of the components required in the legislation, yes, but we don't care about the format. In all honesty, they could be completed on a napkin as long as you have record of it. So a digital format is fabulous. Obviously, I'm not promoting using like napkins, but it's not the format that's regulated, it's the content. So a digital record is great. Any other questions? Okay, well, that tells me I did a great job. Everyone is so clear and you know all the things you need to be doing now moving forward. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you, Jamie, and thank you everyone for your time and attention today.
Yes, really appreciate both of you taking the time, sharing your knowledge with us, helping us make sure that we're doing things properly.